Hello, dear friends in Bulgaria and all over the world, and welcome. We are watching the TV show Visible and Invisible, Counter-Propaganda. I'm Svet Dineham. Russian aggression against Ukraine continues. Putin's war of choice is destructing the international order and it is enormously endangering world peace at a scale unseen since World War II. Today, I'm excited to talk to a very special person on these issues. Frederick Benjamin Ben Hodges III is a retired United States Army officer, Lieutenant General, who served as Commanding General, United States Army Europe. He has been awarded with the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, among many other awards from all over the world. He is a veteran from the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. General Hodges is the author of the book Future War and the Defense of Europe. He is currently the Senior Advisor at Human Rights First. Welcome, General Hodges.
Thank you very much for the privilege.
Do you expect a long war in the trenches in Ukraine? Will the conflict continue throughout the whole 2023?
It does not have to be a long war. It could be over this year if the West provides Ukraine what they need. And if we keep the sanctions in place on Russia, then this can end this year.
So does the Russian military learn from their mistakes or not?
I think that at some level they have. We see them changing their tactics around Soledar and Bakhmut, for example. But fortunately, they have not yet figured out how to repair their logistics system. They have not yet figured out how to repair their incoherent command structure. And they still have not figured out how to conduct joint operations where you integrate air, land, and sea. So, yes, at the tactical level, some things we're seeing improvements. But on the bigger pieces, I'm not impressed yet with their ability to learn and make significant adjustments.
Why the Russian military is actually so bad in their logistics?
I think that this is first of all, it's something I overestimated myself. I thought they would be better. Part of the problem is corruption. I always assumed there was a degree of corruption, but I did not realize how deep and widespread the corruption was. So because of corruption, they did not get good quality on much of their equipment. And the equipment that's been in storage has not been properly maintained. So there's a corruption aspect here. But also, their logistics system was not designed to support long-term sustained land operations outside of Russia. And so they're having to figure this out as they go. Moving artillery ammunition, of course, is very difficult. And if you don't have a system set up for that, especially if you have to move away from the railroads, then it's a real challenge. And because they don't exercise in a rigorous, challenging sort of way, and because they have so little operational experience for most of their force outside of Russia, they were not prepared to be able to do this.
I see. Do you think, is there a danger of the conflict going beyond Ukrainian borders? And what should be NATO's response in such a scenario?
There is a danger if we look weak. If we do not demonstrate that we are prepared as NATO to defend all of our allies, each other, or if we are weak and Ukraine is defeated, if somehow Russia is able to keep going, or we lose interest in the West, or we lose the will to support Ukraine, then for sure, I believe that the Kremlin will continue what they have started in Georgia, have continued in Ukraine, and they said they would. So I think we should take that at face value. So stopping them now, defeating them, not not just stopping them, defeating them now is going to be important for all of us.
Absolutely. What is the danger of the Russian nuclear capabilities, which are now based in Crimea?
Well, of course, the Russians have thousands of nuclear warheads, and they obviously do not care how many innocent people they might kill. So we have to take the threat seriously. However, I think that it is unlikely they would use a nuclear weapon. I think they know that there is no battlefield advantage to using a nuclear weapon. Nothing will help them on the battlefield. I think they believe my president when he said that there would be catastrophic consequences for Russia if they used a nuclear weapon. And I also think that the people around Putin are thinking about life after him, and that if they have any hope of getting back to something that looks like normal, they know that they will have to make sure that he never does use a nuclear weapon. So this is why I think it's unlikely.
Considering this new axis which has been formed between Russia and China, how good are the declared perfect relations between Russia and China? Are there any grounds for a strategic disagreement between them?
Yeah, I think this friends without limits relationship absolutely has limits. I think President Xi has already made it clear to President Putin that using nuclear weapons, for example, is not good, and threatening the use of nuclear weapons is not good. So I'm not so sure that this is a significantly strong relationship. I mean, as far as we can tell, China is not providing significant amounts of military aid. I mean, the Chinese are thinking bigger, longer term. They don't want to run afoul of U.S. or Western sanctions. And I think they're happy to take cheap gas from Russia. But I think that they probably, I don't know this, but I suspect that they're not happy with the Kremlin, because what the Kremlin has done has been to awaken all of us. That now all of us are getting improving our own readiness, defense industry, strengthening the alliance. So I think that China probably would prefer that was not the case.
Is there any chance the United States will do something decisive to try to change things in Iran? Speaking of this axis of like Russia, China, and Iran.
Well, I certainly would not know. I don't read or see or hear anything that indicates that. Of course, all of us are very concerned about Iran's continued efforts to develop a nuclear weapon, their support for terrorist organizations, and certainly their support for Russia is not winning them any friends. But I would not speculate about whether or not the U.S. is going to actually do something above what we're already doing in terms of diplomacy and sanctions. But it is something that the people, the women of Iran, yes, are showing more courage than all of the people of Russia. And I think these young women deserve support from all of us.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with you. Exactly. I really hope for some free world support to the democracy movement in Iran. Let's switch to Bulgaria for a bit. Is there a Russian strategic interest going from Eastern Europe and Crimea through Bulgaria all the way through the Balkans? Can we say that Bulgaria is the door to the Balkans from Russian point of view? And how dangerous is that for Bulgaria?
Well, Bulgaria, of course, sits in an strategically important part of the world, on the Black Sea, in the Balkans, between Black Sea, Adriatic, just north of Greece. So the United States has developed infrastructure working with our Greek allies to help be able to move up into the Balkan region with energy supplies, military, etc. And so where Bulgaria sits is in the middle of all that. Russia, of course, has zero interest in having stability in the Balkans. Russia is more interested in creating or supporting instability in the Balkans in order to create problems for NATO allies and for EU members in the region as a way to distract away from Ukraine, and also to try and limit the possibilities of further Western integration by, say, Serbia or Kosovo or other nations in the region. So Bulgaria, important because of where it sits on the Black Sea, important because of where it sits on the Danube, important because of where it sits amongst other countries, is in an important place. The Black Sea has so much potential for economic investment for all of us, but it's unrealized because Russia has no interest in seeing continued economic development in the region except for what benefits them. So kind of a vertical development versus east-west development. That's why they have stopped port development in Georgia. They have limited improvements in the Danube. They're not interested in that. So I think Bulgaria is in a place that it could really benefit, especially from a U.S. strategy for the Black Sea region. You probably are aware that the U.S. government now, there's a law that requires us to develop a strategy for the Black Sea region. And that would include economic development, diplomatic efforts, as well as military. So I think if Bulgaria is leaning forward, if Bulgaria is interested in getting in on that opportunity, now is the time.
And should Bulgaria invest more in military infrastructure to be able to better host allied troops and thus to bring for better national security? For example, Romania did a lot in this respect already.
Yeah, Michael Koganachanu Air Base near Constanta is the center of gravity of U.S. Military effort in the Black Sea region. I mean, there's a lot of capability that's there, as you know, as well as at Câmpia Turzii, another Romanian air base. Now, of course, you know, and your listeners know that we have American soldiers that are constantly rotating through the Novosello training area there. But I think the Danube really is a place where we have more unrealized potential. The river does not carry nearly as much cargo as it could. The U.S., I think, would like to be able to move more bulk cargo. I could imagine moving fuel, for example, things like that on the Danube, but it's just not. It's not very attractive right now to be able to do that. I would think that Bulgaria would be very interested in the vertical communications, if you will, north-south transport, because it is obviously difficult moving through the Balkans, and so from a security standpoint, the need to move more quickly, to move faster, requires infrastructure.
Okay. What is the real level of the Russian nuclear danger in the world?
Well, of course, they have thousands of weapons. And as I said earlier, they don't care how many innocent people might die. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason that NATO is a nuclear alliance, that we maintain a nuclear deterrent as long as Russia has a nuclear weapon. So there has to be a very clear communication to the Kremlin that it would be a disaster for them should they ever use a nuclear weapon. So that's the reason that NATO is a nuclear alliance. Still, having said that, I don't see it as likely that they would use a nuclear weapon because there's no real benefit for them. For the Russians, their nuclear weapons are actually most useful when they don't use them because it causes all of us to continue to deter ourselves, that we hesitate on doing everything we should for Ukraine, for example, because some people are, I think, overly concerned about this.
Recently, in the Wall Street Journal, Hudson Institute senior fellows Peter Ruff and Luke Coffey, they say that if the Ukraine war continues to go poorly for Vladimir Putin, Russia will face a range of possibilities from revolution and insurgency to a civil war and the dissolution of the Russian Federation. Do you agree? And if so, are the United States and the free world prepared for such contingencies?
I absolutely agree with Luke Coffey that there is the possibility of a breakup of the Russian Federation. Nobody is advocating for this, obviously, and there will always be a Russian state. But we should be prepared for the possibility. I mean, you can see their economy is under enormous pressure. Nobody in Europe, or most people in Europe, are moving away from purchasing Russian gas. There are serious ethnic divisions inside the Russian Federation, and I think several of these countries are looking for opportunity to decolonialize themselves. The power struggles amongst the various factions around the Kremlin are becoming increasingly evident on the surface. So I think at some point, Russian families have got to be realizing that their life has not gotten any better under Vladimir Putin, that over 100,000 Russian young men have been killed in this conflict for which he is 100% solely responsible, and that they have not benefited over the years, whereas life in most other former Soviet republics or Warsaw Pact countries has gotten significantly better through membership in the EU, through opportunities that come from becoming free and being able to make their own choices. So I do see it as a possibility. I do not think that we are ready for that. I think that too many people still don't believe that this is actually possible, that it could happen. So we will be surprised again, just like we were at the end of the Cold War.
What do you expect from the oncoming next Ramstein meeting? Could we see more military capabilities provided to Ukraine?
Yeah, I'm sure of it. This Ramstein contact group meeting is going to be particularly important for two reasons. Number one, this is the first meeting in the aftermath of this terrible strike over the weekend that killed so many innocent people in their apartment house caused by a Russian precision weapon. So, what comes out of this particular Ramstein contact group meeting will be seen, I think, against the backdrop of that. How are we responding? The second reason this is uniquely or particularly important, of course, it'll be the first one for the new German defense minister, Mr. Pistorius. And so opportunity for him to kind of make himself known to everybody. And hopefully, we will see a more forward-leaning approach by Germany.
Do you think that in the future, if by chance, Putin loses the war and Russia backs up, how should the West approach the new Russia in such a scenario? My question is will it be possible to do business with Russia as usual?
Yeah, not with any of these people that we see in leadership positions now. I mean, almost every one of them is going to be indicted for war crimes. So I cannot envision, if we have any sense of sincerity when we talk about preserving the international rules-based order and holding people accountable, I cannot imagine seeing Mr. Lavrov or President Putin, for example, speaking at the UN or being at some reception or at the G20 or any of these kind of things. That would be a real betrayal. And I think that almost every face that we see on TV now, when you're talking about Russian leaders, they are all going to they should pay a price, like Nuremberg trial type price.
Yes, I agree with you, because you raised a very important issue of honesty, sincerity, and moving away of this, how to say, hypocrisy, which was common for certain leaders after 2014, before the beginning of last year's full-scale war, which Russia started against Ukraine. I have been in a lot of personal pain observing the situation after 2014 and seeing that the West is not, and the world is not paying enough attention to Ukrainian suffering, and the fact that there had been already a war after 2014 against Ukraine from Russia. So I'm really glad that you share this opinion that there should be some international tribunal, and these people should be held accountable for their actions. And we move to our final question. Is there any chance that Russia might try to negotiate some kind of peace with the United States in order to get out of its military failure in Ukraine, and in order to try to stop an eventual process of dissolution of the Russian Federation? For example, there was a meeting the very end of last year between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Russian Secretary of the National Security Council Nikolai Patrushev. And then there was another meeting in Turkey of the Russian Foreign Intelligence SVR chief Sergei Narishkin with the CIA Director William Burns.
Well, I think that the Kremlin is probably looking for a way out of this self-inflicted disaster before they lose too much more. But I think my president has been very clear that this is going to be up to Ukraine. I can't imagine. I certainly would be very unhappy if we were to be doing some sort of negotiation with Russia without Ukraine at the table. And I will also say Crimea is the decisive terrain. Ukraine will never be safe or secure as long as Russia sits in Crimea. And Ukraine will never be able to rebuild their economy so long as Russia sits in Crimea. And I think the Ukrainians know that. I think most of us realize that. And so we should stop talking about any sort of negotiation that involves Ukraine giving up Crimea. I mean, first of all, how naive to think that Russia would be satisfied and then everything will be okay. And then secondly, I would ask, if any country says, come on, Ukraine, give up Crimea, then ask that person what part of their country are they willing to give up just for the sake of peace. I'm pretty sure nothing. So I think that this is going to end when Ukraine compels Russian forces to leave Crimea. And that can happen this year if we give them the long-range precision weapons that enable them to start making Crimea untenable now. If they had ATACMS, they could already be hitting Sevastopol. They could already be hitting Zhenkoy. They could already be hitting every place in Crimea where the Russians have airfields, Navy bases, logistics, and for sure they could prevent Russia from repairing this illegal Kerch Bridge.
If you allow me, just a very brief final question. Do you think that the United States will be sustainable in their policy toward the goals you've just mentioned, and will it be, how to say, strong enough to withstand all this authoritarian attack which is going on against the world?
Obviously, I certainly hope so. And I have been encouraged by the the bipartisan support that comes from Republicans and Democrats in the Congress. This is important. Of course, there are a few people on both sides that are not as supportive, or in fact are against it. But the vast majority of the Congress continue to support this, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that most Americans support it. So at this point, I don't see a drop off before the end of 2023.
This sounds optimistic, and this is very, very important for us in Bulgaria, for all of us in Eastern Europe. So let us be optimistic and never lose our faith, and be strong together. General Ben Hodges, I thank you so much for this interview, sir.
Thank you for the privilege and opportunity you've given me.
Thank you so much, and I really hope that in the near future, when you have the time, we could talk more about these issues. It would be a privilege for us.
Thank you. I would like that.
Thank you so much, General Hodges. Thank you. This has been my exclusive interview with General Ben Hodges, former Commanding General of the United States Army in Europe. I'm looking forward to continuing interviewing global security experts from all over the world. I thank you all for being together tonight with Visible and Invisible Counter-Propaganda with me, Svet Dinejham. I will see you next time. Until then, you may like, follow, and share our Visible and Invisible Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or support us on Patreon. Thank you all. Stay cool as usual. Have a good one. Thank you.